Mark Allen, Atwood, Brimstone, good old days. You're listening to Lone Star Internet Radio here at OurLoneStar.com. Mornings with the Lone Star. Hanging out in the studio with me is Nathan Arzadi with Meet the Candidates here on OurLoneStar.com in downtown Conroe. We're having random people walk by and wondering what's going on here. But Nathan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you? I know who that young man is. That is Joey Ashton.
Okay.
Special investigator with the DA's office, owner of Red Onion Catering, and a philanthropist behind the scenes that has a heart the size of Texas for others in need.
Well, I hope he's not here for me.
Man about town. Nathan knows everybody.
He is here for a $400 check because he held a fundraiser.
I didn't know that's what we do here.
Yeah, he held
we
a
give
fundraiser.
out money. I like it.
Yep, he held a fundraiser for
well, he can come on in. We don't want to waste his
fire
time.
family that lost their house to a fire this past Sunday.
Tell me more about this.
Okay, so Brandon Farrell is a firefighter with Conroe. His wife, Jules, is a law enforcement officer, Constable Precinct 2. And about a month ago, they lost their house to a fire.
What kind of fire? Just like, do we know that details, or is it just...
Yeah, I mean, it started up in the attic.
Oh, okay, one of those.
They were lucky that they were awake because it was one of those slow, smoldering type of fires that could have killed them just by the smoke versus the fire. Fast forward to, they got some insurance, but it doesn't always cover everything. A lot of friends came together, Joey being the one that pushed it, and said, let's help him out. Let's help him to replace the small things that insurance isn't going to do. And before you knew it, he had this gigantic group of people from Gene DeForest office to other firefighters to people that just cared. Had a live and silent auction, had food, had a DJ. Captain Mike White was the DJ. Gene DeForest was the auctioneer. Tons of things were donated. And we had somebody who was vacationing in Mexico that saw a jersey that was being live auctioned, and they said, will you be my proxy bidder? So we delivered that to the guy, and then now we got a $400 check. And the community loved the fact that Joey pushed it out there because they wanted to get involved. And Joey's really shy. He's just giving a thumbs up. Joey has a face for radio.
Don't we all?
Raised over 19,000, just shy of 20,000.
Wow.
Hey, why don't you put a headset on? We can't hear you.
Folks, you're fixing to hear what Joey said that they were able to raise for the Farrell family.
Yeah, we raised just shy of 20,000. I think our total was $19,310 for the family in one day. So it was a great event. You know, we do our best to help anybody in need, especially our first responders and our law enforcement. They're always here for us, and we were there for them in their time of need. So we took care of them and did what we needed to do and what was right. So. And
it was cool because it was also during early voting, so we were calling people out, hey, come grab a burger and vote. You know, Gary was there, Philip Cash, Rusty Fincher, Billy Ballard, Sam Laird.
Pretty well everybody in the Constable Precinct.
Kim Franklin and all them, they were there. They were there and they supported it all. Chuck Meyer was there too.
I wasn't there. I'm just letting you know. You're listing all these really great people, and I'm like, oh, I wasn't there. But I was probably in here.
It was a great job, Joey. And I know that you don't look for the public praise, but Red Onion Catering, check them out on Facebook. Joey and his wife Stephanie and their two daughters, they, you guys just don't know how much they do for the community. As much as you see on Facebook them doing, triple that, and behind the scenes they're that much involved for those in need.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank y'all so much. Continue on.
All right, don't catch the bad guy for us.
Continue on. I like it. We're sitting here with Gary Henson. He's running for a precinct chair at Box 50. That's our special guest for this Meet the Candidates. Nathan is on his Facebook at Montgomery County Lifestyle, taking questions and all that good stuff. So if you have a question for Gary or for me or for Nathan over here, and if you want to donate money to that cause, just contact Nathan. I don't think will shut the door on that. But I'm really excited about having Gary in for several reasons. We're going to talk about precinct chair, Box 50, and then also talk about younger voters. That's what I would like to talk about.
Absolutely.
Gary happens to be on the younger side when it comes down to the most people who telling you to vote. And that to me is really interesting, being in this world of first time I ever voted was when George Bush was running for his first term, not senior but junior.
Junior, okay.
And that was the first time I got to vote, and it was just a surreal.
2000 then.
Yeah,
okay.
It was a surreal moment because I had no idea what was going on, and that was the only person I knew who was on the ballot. And his opponent. That was the only person I knew. I think there was like 40-something odd things I had to vote for.
Right.
And that was the only person, or the only two names I recognized. So I think it's really interesting to see how the next generation is really going to affect our future, and especially those who are older, how they're probably scared to death because of how the younger generation's been acting. with the insurgence of social media. And
Absolutely.
then also technology. So
Absolutely.
we're gonna touch base on that if you don't mind, Gary.
Let's hit it all.
But if you don't mind, we'll start out with you. Tell the audience who you are, what you do, and how you're involved, and especially just give them a little snippet about the Precinct Chair Box 50.
Certainly. So, well, first and foremost, thank you guys for letting me come on today. This is fantastic. I was inspired to come on because, as Nathan pointed out a few minutes ago, not a lot of people understand or know much about what a precinct chair is, what we do, what we're all about, how we're involved with the process. So to kind of back up a little bit about myself very quickly, I'm a fifth-generation Texan. Grew up my whole life here in Montgomery County. This has been my home. It's the home I've ever known, I suppose. Went to Willis ISD, graduated from there in 2004. Went on to Texas A&M and graduated from there in 2008. From there, I did a study abroad to Japan for a year, actually. So tried to be a little bit of a world traveler. My degree was international business. At the time when I was going through school, everyone kept saying, "Oh, Gary, you need to get those international kind of degrees because we're a new, fastly globalizing a nation, a world that." If you have that language under your belt and everything, then that's going to make you that much more viable.
No, I'm convinced if you have a second or third language, you can do any job. I'm convinced.
So what languages do you know, buddy?
I know Japanese. I learned Japanese at A&M and then also when I was in Japan. So that was part of the process. But the amusing part, though, was when I graduated, it was 2008, right when the financial crisis, the recession hit, and there was no jobs. And so
you know Japanese, so
I do know Japanese, so I had that at least. But I kind of just traveled around a little bit, worked odd jobs. I did everything from being accounts payable to working in the front desk at a concierge for a hotel. Finally found myself back here about 3 years later. Folks were starting to improve a little bit financially. Jobs were becoming available again, but I always had this hunger. I had this desire to be involved locally. I had already been a major volunteer when I was in middle school and high school. I had been a Boy Scout. I'm an Eagle Scout as well.
Whoa.
And so I always had this volunteer spirit about me, I suppose. And when I came back, I said, local involvement, that's where it's at. No, all this grander stuff is probably outside my breath, so let's just stay local with what I know and what I know I enjoy. And so I started volunteering, got involved, and just the next thing you know, here we are 3 years later, and I suppose I'm serving as your precinct chair. Dr. Wally Wilkerson, our chairman for the Republican Party here in Montgomery County, he basically came to me beginning of last year and said, Gary, the precinct chair, and at that point I'll admit I didn't know a whole lot either about precinct chairs beyond just the basic gist. And he said, though, our previous precinct chair for Box 50, which is where I know you live, has had to step down. And I know you've been volunteering and you've been very dedicated to the party. If you would be willing to, can you step up and take on this responsibility? And I was a little bit leery, pensive maybe about it, and I was like, goodness, I don't know, is this something I can handle? And he said, well, I guarantee you, Gary, you're already pretty well fulfilling a lot of the major responsibilities for it, so this is definitely something I believe that you can do. So we went through the process. I got the training and became well versed in how it all works. So precinct chair itself, as I've come to learn now being through a couple of elections, we are the front line for the Republican Party, not only here in Montgomery County, but for the state and by extension the nation. When it comes to having that initial first contact for the community, the people, the voters right here in Montgomery County, and then smaller than that right there in Box 50, it's your precinct chair. My name, my phone number, my email address, even my physical address is all right there available on the Montgomery County Republican Party website. You can contact me anytime, any place. I every time I tell somebody or I come across someone that says, oh, you're precinct chair, I say, and if you have a question, I have an answer. So please reach out to me.
Who should I vote for?
Who should you vote for?
There you go.
For?
I'm just asking.
You should vote for me.
There you go. That's what I wanted to see what you would say. First answer would be me. Of course. Anything I run in. Anything. But we're sitting here with Gary Henson, and he is on Facebook with Gary Henson for Precinct Chair Box 50 if you want more information, all that kind of good stuff. We're going to take a quick music break here on Lone Star Internet Radio, Lone Star Community Radio, soon to be FM, Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and of course, irlonestar.com worldwide. We'll be back with Nathan Arizzotti, my co-host, for Meet the Candidates here on Lone Star Internet Radio. Let's get some Alan Jackson in our faces. Here's some Jim, Jack, and Hank. We'll be back. All right, that was Roger Miller right there, 921 here on Mornings with Lone Star. Meet the Candidates, hanging out with Nathan Arizzotti and Gary Henson. He's running for Precinct Chair, Box 50. Early voting's going on all the way till, I believe, Thursday?
Friday
Okay.
At 7 p.m.
7 p.m., and then, of course, March 1st. I'm going to let Gary kind of finish up what Precinct Chair Box 50 is, and then we're going to move on to more of what Richard wants to talk about.
We will get to what Richard wants to talk about. I suppose the last tidbit I wanted to mention was the responsibilities that we have actually as Precinct Chair on Election Day, so March 1st. We are sworn in basically as election judges on March 1st. And so we are, as I was mentioning a few minutes ago, we take care of your votes. So at that voting box, so in my case, voting box 50, right there off of Coode Cemetery at the Water District building, I would be there as your election judge, and I'm responsible for managing that equipment, managing that box, making sure everything's done fairly and legally. And at the end of the night, pack it all up, take that vote box back to Election Central, right there off Airport Road, and they plug it into the system, and I sign for it and say, this was in my possession, everything was done as it's supposed to be done, and that's the process.
So you're the guy either get blamed or congratulated.
It is our responsibility. If something goes wrong and something doesn't align like it's supposed to, then I'm the first person they would call. And so we believe it or not, for a position that people don't know a lot about, when it comes down to it, we have a big responsibility.
No, with your responsibilities, I understand the inlay in the Republican side. Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about for the Republican primaries.
This is.
So does this have anything to do with, say, the upcoming elections in May or November? What are you important in that at all?
Well, the same process would exist for the runoff.
Yes,
again, we would be doing the same thing.
Okay,
there would be an early vote process, and then there would be a election, sort of runoff election. And again, we would be fulfilling the same role that we did here for the primary.
Okay. And that's why I'm really excited having you in the studio, because you kind of see the ground floor of
this is the front line, ground floor. Oh yes, definitely.
So I'm going to lead that into the discussion. Is we're looking at the future of voting and how voting is handled. Like for me, I just found out that you can write-in vote, mail-in vote. Sorry. Mm-hmm. And I have to make a joke to Nathan, and I was like, my generation's the Amazon generation, where we don't leave our house. And now that Amazon's having drones drop things off, right. I think the mail-in voting is a more promising thing for younger voters to attach that make it easy than getting off their butts and going to the polls. Do you see a trend in how voting is handled in this country? Do you see it transitioning, or do you see it being for the better? Or how do you see it happening, say, in 2 generations?
Well, I suppose the first challenge, and I'll go ahead and throw out here, I've been serving as chairman for the Montgomery County Young Republicans for this past year. Mm-hmm. And one of the big battle cries that I've had during my time, and that I know my board and our membership has, which is finding ways to get the new generation, and by the new generation I mean kids that are coming out of high school, age 18, 19, that have never really paid attention to the process, and in some ways don't want to pay attention to the process because they feel just so let down by the nature of the world as they've perceived it coming out of school. And we're here to demonstrate, to say, if you have questions, if you have concerns, government, politics, the Republican Party is not some mysterious entity that exists off in some far-off place. We're right here. We're part of your community. We're here to extend that helping hand out to them and say, we're here for you. If you've got something on your mind, come join us. We're going to help you find the answers together. And I think that would be one of the best things that we can do. And I know that a lot of us younger folks right now, within Young Republicans, within the party as a whole, are pushing more for, because we can see that with a lot of our generation and a lot of the younger folks. this disenfranchised attitude. So I think one of the best things we can do is have people help see us as a community organization just as much as a political party.
Well, one thing I want to say on that, of the 21,830 early votes so far, that includes early voting at the polls and absentee balloting, which absentee by mail is the proper term. 12% of all votes cast were by absentee, were by mail. So 2,644 came in by mail. That's 12%. That's pretty good.
Nothing to rub your nose at. No, that's big.
And I know that I've done that before where I lived in Florida. I did the absentee by mail because for the job that I was at, it was really, really hard to get to the polls in that time. And the first time I moved there and the first poll I went to, I was in line at 6 o'clock, but I didn't vote until near 9 o'clock. Because as long as you're in line by 7, you get to stay. But that's how small that polling location was and how many people lived there. So I just started doing by mail.
And that's what I kind of see the struggle, too, with the younger generation is you have to go to these certain places certain times, and it's like a generational gap for people who have the time to go vote, who make excuses not to go vote, and then the process they have to go through registering, especially the movement of our age. I mean, I think, and this is just based off no statistics, is as the younger generation grows, the jobs aren't as a permanent job basis of where the high school is. I think a lot of people move.
Absolutely.
And one thing that I was talking to Nathan about, Montgomery County is growing, but we're not growing because people are having babies and staying here. We're growing because businesses are inviting and hiring people outside Montgomery County into the county. And when it comes down to awareness and education of voting, really the only media / sources is the Conroe Courier, and then right when you go vote, you have people yelling at you. So it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to say, hey, take some time out of your day and sit down and read this and figure out what's going on. Unless some people get really interested. They get the political bug, and they're like, what does this guy have to do? What does this woman have to do? And really, how can I differentiate and educate my vote? But a lot of people, I feel, don't do that unless there's a big thing on the ballot, like anything that has to do with controversial propositions or for the president of the United States, because people just hate or love a president that's never like in between.
No, absolutely.
But that's the struggle with this kind of election because it's local. I mean, this is a local election period, and a lot of people just don't care. They don't care, and it's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. But I think Montgomery County is kind of transitioning because we're getting more and more people.
But I got to say what's cool, too, and talking from the age gap, if you could go hang out at the early polls or then Tuesday, it is so cool to watch the men and women, the husbands and wives that are 60, 65, 70, 75. They dress up because they know it's an honor and a privilege. And I'm serious. I was out there last Friday campaigning for a good friend of mine, and a few of the older people that walked up, they had on their American flag tie. One woman had red, white, and blue on. They were so proud, and they knew they didn't need anybody's cards. They knew what they were there to do. And you're right, it's a generational thing. The younger generation doesn't understand the importance of a voice, and it is our responsibility to vote.
Absolutely. I suppose that the gap that we have to overcome, I like that term, is how do we teach that now to young folks that are moving here for the first time, maybe folks that have just always heard about it but never really been too involved. How do we breach that? That is the challenge. And something that I know that Dr. Wally has been working a lot on is just continuing to get more and more people registered to vote. There are still a lot of people in this county that are not registered to vote, and I think the more work that we do to help small that gap, then more people will become interested. And I think that's one of the first things that we can do.
Yeah, I imagine that's a challenge for the Republican Party is getting your name out there in front of these transplants in a sense, but also getting the information just to how important it is to vote and when to vote. Because I know, for example, when I was being raised in school, there was a certain time in our social studies, that's what they called it at the time. I think they might call a different class today.
I knew it as social studies too.
But,
so, yeah.
When you go into social studies, certain classes, depending on the year, like we went to go visit Judge Poe when he was judge. like that was part of a field trip to understand how the judicial system works, and I was probably 12 at the time. So my comprehension of a judge and what it was, I mean, he was really nice, and we got to watch him be a judge for I think about 45 minits until, you know, like that kind of stuff.
Oh, wow.
And that was, you know, it didn't stick with me. I was like, man, that's really crazy. And then I met him later because our connections with families and everything, we know him. But other than that, like through our normal school system, no one really talks about local politics.
No.
They might talk about how the three sections of our government works over, you know, the United States, but not locally. And that's one thing I would be pushing for is the public school system and any type of school system in Montgomery County kind of pushes towards more information about, you know, how to get involved and how.
It's funny you should mention that because who was I talking to just the other day? And we were talking about Montgomery County Commissioner's Court, just the court in general, and they did not really understand what those gentlemen did, what the county judge does, and in fact, whenever I brought up county judge, their first response was, "Oh, what does he preside over?" Because they didn't realize, oh no, he's not a judicial judge. He is a judge that just presides over the commissioner's court. He has no control over those commissioners. He's just here to help move the meeting forward and help guide the county on policy. And they just it was like you just saw their heads pop, going, what? They had no idea. So it's educating people too. You're right, not just about the national issues, but just here locally about the small things that, amazingly, there's a lot of people that just don't have that grasp on it yet. So.
Well, I think I know a few educators, and I think we're better. I think we're better here in Conroe, Montgomery County, Texas, and other places, but it's not reinforced at a young age. It's not talked about. The textbooks, people don't know the textbooks are changing. History and the values are changing. They're dabbling in one or two things that we used to spend days and weeks talking about when we were little kids. So
absolutely,
I think that's a lot of it.
And textbooks is certainly a big part of our education system in general. I mean, you can get me on a soapbox real fast with that one, but absolutely, that's certainly something that needs a lot of attention. There's certainly reform I feel that is certainly pressing on that regard. Our education system as a whole, every time I talk to young folks, it's amazing some of the areas that their schooling focuses on now or doesn't focus on now that used to be second nature to us. And because of that, they're coming out very different than I think you or me or Nathan than what we would probably expect. And so it's been a very humbling experience in that regard. The more I've delved into it, so certainly that's definitely an area that would need a lot of our attention.
We're sitting with Gary Henson. He's running for Precinct Chair, Box 50. Early voting is going on right now all the way to Friday, folks. We're going to take a quick break here on Mornings with Lone Star of Meet the Candidates with my special co-host, Nathan Arizotti of Montgomery County Lifestyle. We'll be back after this. All right, Casey Musgrave's right there. Dime Store, Cowgirl, Mornings with Lone Star. Meet the Candidates, 944. Just to let everyone know, Cindy Cochran's out today. She's taking care of her husband, so she's out for personal leave. So it'll be a replay following this segment with Nathan Arizotti of Montgomery County Lifestyle. Also, coming up today is the Health Hour, Meet the Haters, and then or Hanging with the Haters, sorry. And, of course, the Michael Player Show later on Lone Star Community Radio. So we got a lot of talk shows coming up after this. I'm sitting here hanging out with my bud, Gary Henson. He's not really bud. I can't, so that's what I love about the political times. It's like is if you're somewhat tied with somebody that is somewhat controversial, you'll get in trouble. Like, I don't know how Nathan handles it.
We're buds now, man. Because cool.
He's like in people's face, but I don't know who you are. I don't know what you represent. Like, I'm just kidding.
You know what? It is tough, and we talked about off the air there a minute ago, is especially the power of social media. You catch yourself getting fired up either in a positive way or a negative way, and you got to control yourself, and it's hard. I mean, there's only one person that I've come out hardcore promoted, but I won't do anything negative against that person's opponents either.
Mm-hmm. Sure. We know you're in charge of all those slander Facebook groups.
yeah, I've got hidden Facebook pages. That's a whole other story about
man.
The hidden Facebook pages. But that leads into what we're talking about, the power of social media, both good and bad.
Absolutely.
I haven't really noticed anything. The only thing that's been suspicious to me, and I love it, I think it's showed you the creative mind and wanting to win. And the thing I love right now are the sponsored Facebook pages that have aren't being represented by a group. It's just like a statement, basically saying Kevin Brady sucks.
Oh yeah,
and it's that's it. That's all it is. And I'm like, really? Somebody put money into?
No individuals. Just a post that had money put behind it, so it sticks up near the top. Absolutely,
and that's it. And you're like, okay, well,
yeah. And there's no substance to it. So why do you say that? Because he does. So what do you? Well,
it sucks.
Totally objective at that point.
Yeah.
I love it. That's what.
And I'm hoping that the average person looks at that and says, "This makes no sense."
Yeah.
I go the other way.
I'm a firm believer that by and large, most people, when they see just outrageously objective personal opinions that are just slanderous to that degree, that they just tune it out.
Well, I think people are getting when we're talking about this with Nathan, is people are getting smarter calling this stuff out. I think social media is the greatest thing because the pitchfork kind of response people have, and as you've seen it before happen, it ruins people's careers, it ruins people's lives even.
Absolutely.
And which I think it's funny because there's actually a TV show on Sci-Fi called How Social Media Ruined My Life, and it's an editorial style.
I've not seen this.
Yeah, it's editorial style. People who tweeted the wrong thing, and there's actually a couple of TED Talks about some people who talk about the impact of social media, and especially the speed of the response of people.
It can certainly make heroes and villains very quickly out of people,
and especially if you want to continue.
Oh, absolutely.
Because after you get elected and people still bring it up, will always bring it up, and then you have to be pretty smart how to react in a good way.
Well, the internet, to back up, and I'm not that old. I'm only 30, but I guess the internet itself, I had the opportunity to grow up with it. As it grew, I was growing at the same time. So by the time I got to high school, pretty well what we know as the internet today was finally really coming together, coalescing, and saying, here we are, this brilliant platform for which people can come out and say what is on their mind and
be anonymous.
Be anonymous. Be protected. Be protected by it. No longer they have to put their own personal self on the line, essentially, and they could say what they're feeling. And sometimes that is the greatest thing in the world. Other times, though, it's still people are able to come out and say whatever's on their mind. So
that's one thing I love about the Courier, because what's funny to me growing up is I would find myself on forums all the time about just different topics, especially how-tos, and you're looking for answers for computers and other things I'm trying to tinker with. And I'm convinced. I want to say this. I'm convinced you don't need to go to college or high school. You can just go to Google and figure it all out on your own.
Ooh.
But I'm just kidding. Go to school. But no, I think that's important too, because you create a conversation. One of my favorite books was Ender's Game, and I don't know if you've ever read
good book.
Ender's Game before, but in the storyline there is a sister and a brother, and to help Ender, what they did is they went online and created an online personality in political forums and started creating this movement. Wow, and a lot of people missed that. A lot of people missed that in the movie. And I'm like, you realize this guy is basically saying the internet's going to have the power and the movement to convince people to move a certain way politically, just through their writings. It's kind of like, back in the early 1900s, well, even before that, but you know how some people were being poets and they were being excommunicated, or they're getting in trouble because they're just a poet. And I think that power is going to come back, that kind of enforcement. I mean, you can say today's poets would not really poets. Not that takes away from the art, but the guy from WikiLeaks and the guy from the NSA.
The internet has given more power back to the people, and that's why I think that's one of its greatest strengths in that regard. So the average person is now able to hold their leaders, their figures that stand at the top, hold their feet to the fire much quicker and much more effectively now than they were even able to 20, 30 years ago.
So my advice to all future political people: have a good PR guy. Since Gary's actually a PR person, so you need to talk to him if you get your feet held to the fire.
Oh my.
Because I don't know how you do crowd control, especially, and that's one thing I was talking on the Cindy Cochran show. Is a very political show too. She is a Republican. And I kind of told her, when everything gets over by the primaries, someone has stuff on Hillary. Someone has stuff on Donald Trump. I don't know how anyone wouldn't have something on Donald Trump, because that guy's been in so much trouble for the past 30 years. So I'm waiting for something to come out for both of them. But and that's one thing I love about Bernie Sanders is people are sharing like when he was arrested and all this kind of stuff when he was younger.
I've seen that. Yes, absolutely.
Because that's really my generation's really behind Bernie Sanders, which I mean I think that's always going to happen with the younger crowd. But
and I've met a few. There's been a few young folks that have come to the door. I hate to say it, a lot of folks now right here in Montgomery County that are Democratic leaning, and they'll be the first to admit it when I walk and knock on their door, unfortunately, that will say, well, sorry, Gary, I just don't really identify with the Republican Party. I'm just like, okay, can we talk about it? And they're just not identifying it. So that's one of the challenges, again, trying to overcome is show our young generation that the Republican Party is the answer.
Do you see that being just this timeline, or do you see that being kind of a repeated thing where anyone from ages 18 to 25 always just kind of migrate towards a Democratic Party, and then they kind of learn how the world works after that as they get older?
I won't get too, I guess, conspiracy theory on it or anything.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the greatest thing. Yeah, conspiracy theories are great.
But, of course, I think a lot of our, especially higher education, is, of course, pretty liberal-leaning. And by that nature, it causes our young folks, especially when they start going to college, between the people they meet and, of course, the internet again, that they might actually hold strong conservative values, but they are essentially either suppressed by the people, the peers around them, by the internet, that causes them to go, oh, well, maybe this isn't the way I should be. Even though I feel like that's what is right, they are basically suppressed almost to feel that way. And that's why, again, my whole shtick is making sure that our young folks have that opportunity and that contact for the Republican Party. And that's why I think these high school clubs that we've been forming right here in this county and the Young Republicans, I think, is so crucial to help bridge that gap, so that young folks that have those thoughts and have those questions to want to come in and say, I see myself as a conservative, Gary. I see myself as a Republican. And say, fantastic. Come on in, brother. We've got the answers for you right here. There we go. So I think as long as we keep fighting the good fight in that regard, then this is certainly not going to be something that's going to be the new standard. It will just be a passing event.
Yeah. I want to create a Facebook group, Democrats Suck. And then I'll just sponsor that. I love that stuff. Well, I want to say thank you so much, Gary, for coming in and being part of Meet the Candidates and further educating people, hopefully getting this platform up and going. This is our first try of doing this, and we're learning. And we're looking forward to, if there are runoffs, and especially the Conrose elections coming up over in the May time. But again, thank you so much for coming in. He's running, folks, for Precinct Chair, Box 50. Now, before we get to the end of it, I want to know, does that vote, is it just in that area, or is that...
It is strictly that box. So everybody listening, if you live in Precinct Box 50, so that's basically takes up the area on the far end of FM 830, so the subdivisions of Seven Coves, French Quarter, Bluebell Estates, Maggie Lane, Coode Cemetery, Twin Shores, those areas around there. You live in Box 50. I'm your current precinct chair, and I could certainly use your vote. So thank you guys again. This is fantastic.
You can find Gary online on Facebook, Gary Henson for Precinct Chair, Box 50. Nathan, I know we don't have anyone lined up for tomorrow, so if you guys out there want to be part of, I guess we're going to go ahead and just cancel tomorrow.
Unless somebody calls that's really hot that wants to that has a voice for the people.
You got to be hot.
I don't. Okay, that kind of.
you got to be hot.
You look hot. No, if you have some value,
on,
you can add.
That's why you guys got me on here today.
Yeah, well, you are. Duh. Duh. There's women batting down the doors. Look at them. If there's something really strong that can add value to the voting process, the people, I think, we'll have one tomorrow. Okay. But if not, let's take a rest.
They just need to contact you through Montgomery County Lifestyle.
Absolutely. Friday, Craig McMichaels will be in the studio. He's been on once before.
I don't believe it. But he called in last time.
And so he'll be here in the studio. He wants to explain more of his platform and more of his vision versus so much what he doesn't agree with, which I guess the two go hand in hand. But Monday's a pretty daggum cool day. Monday is Andy Dubois of the Conroe Courier from 8:30 to 10. He is going to go over who they endorsed and why. He's going to explain the vetting process. And he wants to give a little comments to even some of those he did endorse, because he said this was a tough year. There's a lot of extremely qualified candidates that are out there. And again, he respects what everybody's going through. So Monday will be a really cool, really fun day, I think.
So stick around, folks. Lone Star Community Radio. Today's segment with Gary is going to be podcasted on SoundCloud and, of course, YouTube. So keep an eye on our Facebook, Lone Star Community Radio, Mornings with Lone Star. Gary, again, thank you so much for coming in. And then I will remind you, coming up next is the Cindy Cochran Show, and she is out, so it's going to be a replay. Following her will be music, and then, of course, after that will be Hanging with the Haters at 12, and then the Health Hour with Mike Sasser at 1, and then the Michael Player Show at 2. That's what's going on. Let's get some Cameron Nelson.